Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your being here. Just a statement before I talk about debates. I think that our country is right now in the most dangerous position it's ever been in from an economic standpoint, from a safety standpoint. Both gangs on the street and, frankly, gangs outside of our country in the form of other countries that are, frankly, very powerful. They're very powerful countries, and we don't know what we're doing. We have leadership that has no clue how to handle them or how to handle any other situation. We have a lot of bad things coming up. You could end up in a depression of the 1929 variety, which would be a devastating thing. Took many years, took decades to recover from it. And we're very close to that. And we're very close to a world war. In my opinion, we're very close to a world war. We have people that don't know how to handle it. They're not respected. All over the world, they're laughed at. And we can't have that. Most dangerous period of time I've ever seen for our country. With that being said, we have somebody that hasn't received one vote for president, and she's running. And that's fine with me. But we were given Joe Biden, and now we're given somebody else.
Some of them coming.
And I think, frankly, I'd rather be running against somebody else. But that was their choice. They decided to do that because Kamala's record is horrible. She's a radical left person at a level that nobody's seen. She picked a radical left man that is, he's got things done that he has positions that are just not, it's not even possible to believe that they exist. He's going for things that nobody's ever even heard of. Heavy into the transgender world, heavy into lots of different worlds having to do with safety. He doesn't want to have borders. He doesn't want to have walls. He doesn't want to have any form of safety for our country. He doesn't mind people coming in from prisons, and neither does she, I guess, because she's not, she couldn't care less. She's the border czar. By the way, she was the border czar 100%. And all of a sudden, for the last few weeks, she's not the border czar anymore, like nobody ever said it. And I just hope that the media becomes more diligent, more honest, frankly, because if they're not going to be honest, it's going to be much tougher to bring our country back. We have a very, very sick country right now. You saw the other day with the stock market crashing. That was just the beginning. That was just the beginning. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse, in my opinion. And fortunately, we've had some very good polls over the last fairly short period of time. Rasmussen came out today, was substantially leading, and others came out today that were leading, and in some cases substantially. I guess MSNBC came out, or CNBC came out also with a poll that has us leading, and leading fairly big in swing states. In some polls, I'm leading very big in swing states because they want safety. People want safety. They want security. They want respect all around the world for our country. They don't want this horrible culture that is developing, a culture of no common sense. It's really a culture of no common sense, and it's not what anyone wants. We want to have a safe country. We want to have a strong military. We want low interest rates, and we want to be able to have the American dream. We want to be able to have our youth be able to buy homes, housing, and get good jobs. And we're really just at the opposite right now. So sad to see. But as a border czar, she's been the worst border czar in history, in the world history. I think the number is 20 million, but whether it's 15 or 20, it's numbers that nobody's ever heard before. 20 million people came over the border during the Biden-Harris administration. 20 million people, and it could be very much higher than that. Nobody really knows what the number is. Nobody knows. Nobody has a clue. And the gotaways, they call them the gotaways. The gotaways are numbers. Somebody was quizzing me on it the other day. No, I don't think so, sir. I don't think so. They have no idea what those numbers are, but they're much higher than you would think. Just like far more people were killed in the Ukraine-Russia war than you ever report. Just like the October 7th would have never happened. Russia would have never hit Ukraine had the election result been called differently. It was a very bad call, but Russia would not have attacked Ukraine. October 7th in Israel would have never happened. You wouldn't have inflation. A lot of great things would have happened, but now you have millions and millions of dead people. and you have people dying financially because they can't buy bacon, they can't buy food, they can't buy groceries, they can't do anything. And they're living horribly in our country right now. With all of that being said, I think it's very important to have debates. And we've agreed with Fox on a date of September 4th. We've agreed with NBC, fairly full agreement, subject to them, on September 10th. And we've agreed with ABC on September 25th. So we have those three dates, and those networks, they're very anxiously awaiting that date and those dates. So we have September 4th, September 10th, and September 25th. We have spoken to the heads of the network, and it's all been confirmed, other than some fairly minor details. Audience, some location, which city would we put it into, but all things that will be settled very easily, I think that'll be very easy. The other side has to agree to the terms. They may or may not agree. I don't know if they're going to agree. She hasn't done an interview. She can't do an interview. She's barely competent, and she can't do an interview. But I look forward to the debates because I think we have to set the record straight. Why is it that millions of people were allowed to come into our country from prisons, from jails, from mental institutions, insane asylums, even insane asylums? That's it's a mental institution on steroids. That's what it is. When you see the people that are coming into these are institutions that are being emptied out, not in South America, all over the world, including South America, all over the world. Prisons are being emptied out into our country because we have a president that's the worst president in the history of our country. We have a vice president who is the least admired, least respected, and the worst vice president in the history of our country, the most unpopular vice president. And because of political reasons or because of being politically correct, even though she never received a vote. Don't forget, she was the first one defeated, as I remember it, because I watched it very closely, but she was the first one. She never made it to Iowa, the first state. She never made it to Iowa. She was the first one that was defeated. She was the nastiest to him. She was nasty with the calling him a racist and the school bus and all of the different things. She was very nasty to Biden. And shockingly, he appointed her, asked her to serve as vice president. Well, I don't know if he's happy about that decision right now. This was taken away. The presidency was taken away from Joe Biden. And I'm no Biden fan, but I'll tell you what, from a constitutional standpoint, from any standpoint you look at, they took the presidency away. And people were saying he lost after the debate. He couldn't win. Well, I don't know that that's true necessarily. But whether he could win or he couldn't win, he had the right to run. And they took it away. They said they're going to use the 25th Amendment. They're going to hit you hard. Either we can do it the nice. I know exactly, because I know a lot of people on the other side, believe it or not. And they said, we'll do it the nice way or we'll do it the hard way. And he said, all right. So that, I mean, they've really taken, what they've done is pretty incredible. And now I'm running against somebody else, and we're leading. We're leading. So I'm not complaining. I'm saying it's for a country with a constitution that we cherish. We cherish this constitution. To have done it this way is pretty severe, pretty horrible. You would have thought they would have gone out to a vote. They would have had a primary system. They would have done something. But to just take it away from him like he was a child. And he's a very angry man right now, I can tell you that. He's not happy with Obama, and he's not happy with Nancy Pelosi, crazy Nancy. She is crazy, too. She's not happy with any of the people that told him that you've got to leave. He's very unhappy, very angry, and I think he also blames her. He's trying to put up a good face, but it's a very bad thing in terms of a country when you do that. I'm not a fan of his, as you probably have noticed. And he had a rough debate, but that doesn't mean that you just take it away like that. Or you go out to a vote, you do something. He had 14 million votes. She had no votes. She got no votes. And I think she's crashing. I think when people find out, and I think people are starting to find out what a bad job she did, what a bad job she did on the border. She's trying to say she had nothing to do with the border. She had everything. She was appointed to head the border. And then they said borders are, oh, she loved that name. She loved that name. But she never went there. She went to a location once along the border, but that was a location that you would love to go and have dinner with your husband or whoever. That was a location that was not part of the problem. That was not really going to the border. So essentially, she never went to the border. And if you listen to Tom Holman, if you listen to the great border people, Brandon Judd from Border Patrol, if you listen to Paul, I mean, so many different people. I speak to them all the time. And I did when I was president. We had the best border in the history of our country. Now we have the worst border in the history of the world. Millions of people coming in. And our country cannot sustain it. Our country is going down because of this, because of incompetent people. So I just look forward to these debates. I think it's very important that we have them. I hope she agrees to them September 4th, September 10th, September 25th. And I think they'll be very revealing. I think they'll be very revealing. Do you have any questions, please? I haven't recalibrated strategy at all. It's the same policies, open borders, weak on crime. I think she's worse than Biden because he got forced into the position. She was there long before. She destroyed San Francisco. She destroyed California as the AG. But as the DA, she destroyed San Francisco. Friend of mine,
No
Bob
way
Tisch.
I could pick this.
All know the Tisch family. He was in many cities with companies. He said the greatest city in the country is San Francisco. That was about 20 years ago. And he passed away a while ago, and he would be looking down and said, what happened? He thought it was the best city in the country. He had divisions there, Lowe's. And he would be looking down in horror now when he sees she destroyed no cash bail, weak on crime. Terrible. And yet they weaponized the system against me. They have me. I got so many lawyers. Now they want to delay cases. I won the big case in Florida. I won the big case. Nobody even wrote about it. The big case, the judge was a brilliant judge, and all they do is they play the ref with the judges. But this judge was a fair but brilliant judge. And as you probably heard, the big documents case, I won it. Now, Biden lost it because he didn't have presidential immunity. He didn't have the Presidential Records Act. He lost it. But the special, I call it prosecutor, special counsel, special prosecutor to me, he, appointed by him, appointed by Garland, he said the man's incompetent. He can't stand trial, but he can run for president. But we no longer have to worry about that because we have somebody that, in my opinion, is more incompetent. She couldn't pass her bar exam and lots of other things, and she should not be in a position because...
Could have left it alone, Nikki. This ain't the old neighborhood. In this vault, I'm king of the castle. You hear me? And I ain't letting some private dick shut us down now that I finally got a good thing going.
I told you we should have just killed him! But then you had to get all sentimental. All that stupid crap about the old times.
Darla, I'm handling this. Skinny Malone's always got things under control.
Oh yeah? Then what's this guy doing here, huh? Valentine must have brought him here to rub us all out?
I could encourage violence, or I could convince her to leave. What's going on?
What's the deal with you people and Nick, anyway?
Darla's a runaway. Her father wanted me to bring her back home. Turns out she skipped town to be with my old pal Skinny Malone, mob boss. Never thought he'd manage to scrape together a big enough crew to take over a vault. Guess life's full of surprises.
Hey, who's running this show here? You got something to say? Say it to me.
You and Nick know each other?
This troublemaker here used to be a real headache back in the day. Before we got kicked out of the old neighborhood. Must have done this dance 100 times. Enemies are kind of the closest thing you get to friends in these parts. Now quit stalling. You're gonna talk? Talk.
This is all just a misunderstanding, Skinny. You know that. You let us walk, and we won't come back.
Like hell you won't.
Oh, shit.
Don't you get it? All the other crews in the area will see this as weakness. Then they'll come for me. Sorry. Time to give you both the hard goodbye.
Oh, fuck. Oh, damn. That was a hard fail. Okay, all that work. And I'm just gonna get fucking killed. Just like that. Bam. Oh, shit. Get out. Oh, fuck. Alright, I'm going back into Vault 14. I am escaping. Oh, shit. Yep. Okay. Yep. Fucking beautiful. All the way back.
If she becomes president, our country is going to be a giant fail. It's going to fail. It's going to be a failure the likes of which this world has never seen.
I hear something.
Yeah, please. All right, how about you?
How do you want to play this?
His only job is to check on the prisoner. Why does
What's up,
that take
kitty?
so fucking
What are
long?
you doing?
Hey,
Dude,
Dino,
cool down.
You have to speak louder.
grab that detective and get down here. Where the heck is he?
Yeah.
You're such a little cutie.
Well, it changes around a little bit. I'm getting other voters. Perhaps, you know, I was doing very well with black voters, and I still am. I seem to be doing very well with black males. This is according to polls, as you know. It's possible that I won't do as well with black women, but I do seem to be doing very well with other segments, extremely well with Hispanic. Jewish voters way up. White males way up. White males have gone through the roof. White males way up. Now, I don't know. All we're doing is giving you the stats that you have. It could be that I'll be affected somewhat with black females, where we're doing pretty well. And I think ultimately they'll like me better because I'm going to give them security, safety, and jobs. I'm going to give them a good economy. We have a very bad economy right now. We could going to give. I think ultimately black females, where we're doing pretty well. And I think ultimately they'll like me better because I'm going to give them security, safety, and jobs. I'm going to give them a good economy. We have a very bad economy right now. We could literally be on the throes of a depression, not recession, a depression. And they can't have that. They can't have that. So I think I'm going to do well with everybody, especially when the facts are out. Yeah, please, in the back. Well, I don't know. I know Josh Shapiro. He's a terrible guy, and he's not very popular with anybody. I think that this election maybe is better than Josh Shapiro would have been. But I think other than Josh Shapiro, I think she had some good choices. But Josh Shapiro is not one of them. He's caused a lot of damage with a lot of people. And I don't think he would have been better. I think he would have been maybe the equivalent, maybe not as good. But they had some people that they were looking at that were good, far superior to her. They actually had a story where they had everybody, including, they had like 10 people that she was looking at, and her. And they said she was the worst of all. In other words, she was the worst out of the 10 people and her. I don't know how that's going to work out. We'd like to do 3 debates. We think we should do 3 debates. We think Fox and ABC. And we also have CBS is going to do the vice presidential debate. So CBS will do vice presidential, and I have to tell you, J.D. Vance has really stepped up. He's doing a fantastic job. Say it. Oh, give me a break. Listen, I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday? 2,000 people? If I ever had 2,000 people, you'd say my campaign is finished. It's so dishonest, the press. And here's a great example.
There we are.
I had in Michigan recently 25,000 people, and 25,000 people were we just couldn't get them in. We had in Harrisburg, 25,000 people, and 20,000 people couldn't get in. We had so many. Nobody ever mentions that. When she gets 1,500 people, and I saw it yesterday on ABC, which they said, oh, the crowd was so big. I have 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the crowd size. And no, they never say the crowd was big. That's why I'm always saying turn around the cameras. I'm so glad you asked that. I think it's so terrible when you say, well, she has 1,500 people, 1,000 people, and they talk about, oh, the enthusiasm. Let me tell you, we have the enthusiasm. The Republican Party, and me as a candidate, but the Republican Party has the enthusiasm because people want to see crime stopped. They want to see a country that's respected. Think of it. If I were president, you wouldn't have Russia and Ukraine, where it never happened. Zero chance. You wouldn't have had October 7th of Israel. You wouldn't have the horrible withdrawal. And I don't mean the withdrawal, because the withdrawal was fine. I was ready to withdraw from Afghanistan, and we were going to do it with dignity and strength. And we were keeping our equipment. We weren't leaving $85 billion worth of equipment behind. And we wouldn't have had 13 great soldiers. I know the families of those soldiers well. We wouldn't have had 3 soldiers killed, and we wouldn't have had 45 soldiers obliterated. No legs, no arms, the face. None of that would have happened. And you wouldn't have had inflation. You wouldn't have had any inflation, because inflation was caused by their bad energy problems. Now they've gone back to the Trump thing because they need the votes. I don't know if you know, they're drilling now because they had to go back because gasoline was going up to $7, $8, $9 a barrel. So they said, we better do what Trump. But the day after the election, if they won, you're going to have fuel prices go through the roof. Everybody's going to be forced to buy an electric car, which they're not going to do because they don't want that. It's got a great market. It's got a market. It's really a sub-market. People want gasoline-propelled cars. They want hybrids. They want to have everything, and they want electric.
What's that?
But they want everybody to have an electric car. We don't have enough electricity. We couldn't make enough electricity for that. And you know what else? The weight of a car, the weight of a truck. They want all trucks to be electric. Little things that a lot of people don't talk about. The weight of a truck is 2.5 times heavier. You would have to rebuild every bridge in this country if you were going to do this ridiculous policy. So, but on crowd size, in history, for any country, nobody's had crowds like that, and you know that. And when she gets 1,000 people and everybody starts jumping, you know that if I had 1,000 people would say, that's the end of his campaign. I have hundreds of thousands of people. In South Carolina, I had 88,000 people. In Alabama, I had 68,000 people. Nobody says about crowd size with me. But she has 1,000 people or 1,500 people, and they say, oh, the enthusiasm's back. No. The enthusiasm is with me and the Republican Party because they want to stop crime. They want to stop people from pouring into our country from places unknown and from countries unknown, from countries that nobody ever heard of. That's where the enthusiasm is.
Where the heck is he?
There's something out there.
I don't know if I can or not. I got him elected. Without me, he wouldn't be governor. I got him elected. He was doing terribly. I got him elected. With that being said, I hope we can repair it, but if we don't, the people are still the people, and they're going to vote. We're leading in Georgia by a lot. We're leading in Pennsylvania by a lot. So, but I don't know. Now, in Pennsylvania, I have great relationships. In Georgia, I do too, but unfortunately not with the governor. I've never understood it. When you get somebody elected, they're supposed to like you. He's not exactly, for some reason, and you'll have to ask him about that. Yeah, I'd love to see it get repaired. I think that if we don't win Georgia, Georgia is a big win, is a big state. So I won Alabama by a record. Nobody's ever gotten that many votes. I won South Carolina by a record. You don't win Alabama and South Carolina by records and lose Georgia. It doesn't happen. And the people of Georgia understand that. There was tremendous anxiety and problems in Georgia. A lot of people say, what happened? And we have to, all we want is honest elections. If we have honest elections in Georgia, if we have honest elections in Pennsylvania, we're going to win them by a lot.
Loud, huh? Well, gets the job done. Too bad for whoever cleans up the floors. door's on the fritz. Let me see if I can get it open.
Well, he actually said it two ways. First, he said it incorrectly, then he
There
corrected
we are.
himself. Do you agree with that, right?
Hell of a
You know,
lot
if you watch
easier
him,
to do when
he
the
said
lock
it two
isn't
ways.
on the other
No, no,
side.
no. I mean, he said it two ways because he doesn't really know what he said. Why didn't he bring it up at the debate? You know, he had a chance for 90 minutes to bring it up at the debate. He could have talked about that at the debate, and he didn't do it. Everyone said, oh, he said this and he said that. He's just, you know, they give him something to read off. He read it very badly because he actually said it the opposite. Then he had to go back and correct himself. He said the opposite. He should have brought this up at the debate. If he had a problem, of course there'll be a peaceful transfer. And there was last time, and there'll be a peaceful transfer. I just hope we're going to have honest elections. That's all. Okay? What a stupid question this is.
If we're gonna dance, let's dance.
Because I'm leading by a lot and because I'm letting their convention go through, and I am campaigning a lot. I'm doing tremendous amounts of taping here. We have commercials that are at a level I don't think that anybody's ever done before. Plus, in certain cases, I see many of you in the room where I'm speaking to you on phones, I'm speaking to radio, I'm speaking to television. Television's coming over here. Excuse me, what are we doing right now? She's not doing any news conference. You know why she's not doing it? Because she can't do a news conference. She doesn't know how to do a news conference. She's not smart enough to do a news conference. And I'm sorry, we need smart people to lead this country because our country's never been in this danger before, both economically and from an outside perspective. Russia doesn't respect us anymore. China doesn't respect us anymore. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, liked me a lot. He doesn't like this group. We are in great danger. We're in great danger of being in World War III. That could happen. No, after their convention, yeah. And I'm going out, actually, I'm going out to certain places to help certain senators get elected. Not even for me. I'm trying to help when I go out to Wyoming or when I go out to Montana, or I'm going to different places to help people. And I don't have to go there because I'm leading those states, as you know, by 35, 40, 50 points. I'm leading by record numbers. I'm going because I want to help senators and congressmen get elected. Congressmen and women get elected. Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Got a nice pair
The
of
upcoming
cement
what?
shoes for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Elon Musk. So, yeah, sure. So Elon called me. As you know, he endorsed me full-throated. Great endorsement. I respect Elon a lot. He respects me. And not easy for him to endorse, to be honest with you. You know, it takes courage to endorse
Enjoy your coffee.
people. Many people have courage and many people don't. He does have courage. And Elon endorsed me, and he asked me whether or not I'd do a show on Monday, and I think it's going to be Monday night. And I believe he's the host of the show. So it'll be very interesting. A lot of people are talking about it. I look forward to it. That'll be done on Monday night. Well, you have a lot of misinformation spread about China, and you have a lot of misinformation spread about a lot of different places. I think I'm going to get along great with China. President Xi of China and I were very good friends. We met right here, right in that, except we had a beautiful sofa there, as opposed to what we have right now. Right now we have you. But President Xi and I had a very good relationship until COVID. And I held him responsible for COVID. It broke up our relationship. But I think we're going to have a great relationship. And I think it's going to be mutually beneficial. But we cannot have it where China is taking advantage of the United States. And that's what they were doing, as you very well know. Yes, please. Okay, what's your question? No, I think the people that, if you look at January 6th, which a lot of people aren't talking about very much, I think those people were treated very harshly when you compare them to other things that took place in this country where a lot of people were killed. Nobody was killed on January 6th. But I think that the people of January 6th were treated very unfairly. And they were there to complain, not through me, they were there to complain about an election. And, you know, it's very interesting. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I said peacefully and patriotically, which nobody wants to say, but I said peacefully and
More
patriotically.
stairs?
The biggest crowd I've ever spoken to, and you've seen Maggie, I was at the mall, I was at the Washington Monument, I was at the whole thing. I had crowds, I don't know who's ever had a bigger crowd than I have, but I had it many times. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken before was that day, and I'll tell you, it's very hard to find a picture of that crowd. You see the picture of a small number of people relatively going to the Capitol, but you never see the picture of the crowd. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken, I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. They said I had 25,000, and he had 1 million people, and I'm okay with it because I like Dr. Martin Luther King. Yeah, please. Yeah, sure. We have a constitution. It's a very important document, and we live by it. She has no votes, and I'm very happy to run against her. I'm not complaining from that standpoint. And I hate to be defending him, but he did not want to leave. He wanted to see if he could win. They said, you're not going to win after the debate. They said, you're not going to win. You can't win. You're out. And at first they said it nicely, and he wasn't leaving. And then you know it better than anybody. Wait a minute. So when you think about it, they said at first they were going to go out to another vote. They were going to go through a primary system, a quick primary system, which it would have to be. And then it all disappeared, and they just picked a person that was the first out. She was the first loser, okay? So we call her the first loser. She was the first loser when during the primary system. During the Democrat primary system, she was the first one to quit, and she quit. She had no votes, no support, and she was a bad debater, by the way, very bad debater. And that's not the thing I'm looking forward to, but she was a bad debater. She did obviously a bad job. She never made it to Iowa. Then for some reason, and I know he regrets it, you do too, he picked her, and she turned on him too. She was working with the people that wanted him out. But the fact that you can get no votes, lose in the primary system, in other words, you had 14 or 15 people, she was the first one out, and that you can then be picked to run for president, it seems to me actually unconstitutional. Perhaps it's not. Please. So I've run against Hillary, and I've run against various other people. I would say that in terms of intelligence, Hillary was far superior. I would say that. Hillary was smart. She was her own worst enemy in many ways, but she was smart, very smart. Okay? If you ask me to compare.
Step through
Please.
the door, get ready for anything.
Would you repeat that question, please? You have to speak up. It's a hard room because it's very big, if you know. So this is worth $18 million. Oh, I see.
What are you doing? You come into my house, shoot up my guys? You have any idea how much this is gonna set me back?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for your two-timing.
So I think the
games,
abortion
Skinny.
issue has been
Oughta tell
very
her to
much
write
tempered
home more
down.
often.
And I've answered, I think, very well in the debate, and it seems to be much less of an issue, especially for those where they have the exceptions, as you know. And I think it's when I look for 52 years, they wanted to bring
This vault,
abortion back to the states. They wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade, and that's Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and everybody. Liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back in the states, and I did that. Now the states are voting. And frankly, some of the votes are much more, if you could say, liberal than you would think. Ohio turned out to be, they had a big vote, and it turned out to be a much more liberal standing than people would have thought. Kansas, the same thing. And then you have Texas, and you have other places where it may be different. But the issue has been brought back to the states now. And like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe, I believe strongly. I think that that's a very important thing. I think when you don't,
your life away with
you have to follow your heart. But when you don't believe in the exceptions, I think it's much tougher. It's a much tougher issue.
Gotten all mixed up.
But about 82% of Republicans do believe in exceptions. I think and a lot of them are changing their mind and coming even further. I think that abortion has become much less of an issue. It's a very small. I think it's actually going to be a very small issue. What I've done is I've done what every Democrat and every Republican wanted to have done, and we brought that issue back to the states. And now the states are voting on it. And frankly, some of the votes are a lot different than people would have thought. But it's the vote of the people is taking care of it. And when you think about the radical. The Democrats are really the radical ones on this because they're allowed to do abortion on the 8th and 9th month and even after birth. If you look at your new governor from Minnesota, he's talking about, he's like the governor previous, the former governor. I don't want to get him mixed up because Glenn is doing a good job and he's leading our whole campaign in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. But previous to Glenn, the governor, he said, the baby will be born, we will put the baby aside, and we will decide with the mother what we're going to do. In other words, whether or not we're going to kill the baby. The Minnesota gentleman, this guy agrees with that. He is the most liberal. Look, between her and him, there's never been anything like this. There's never been a combination so, I'll use the word progressive. They want to go progressive. They don't like the word liberal. I like liberal better. I think it's more appropriate because nobody knows what progressive means. But they now like to use the word progressive. But there's certainly never been anybody so liberal like these two, or even close. I think the abortion issue has been taken down many notches. I don't think it's a big factor anymore, really. And when people hear what I said in the debate, and I think I said it very well during the debate, we brought it back to the states. Everybody wanted it in the states. And very importantly, and you think about this, assuming you have exceptions. If you don't have exceptions, it's a more difficult thing. At the same time, there are people that strongly feel that way, and you have to follow your heart, and you should follow your heart. But that issue is very much subdued. Yeah, thank you.
Nick.
Are you ready to talk?
About
How
who?
do you know to find me down in that old vault?
Your secretary, Ellie. She sent me.
She did?
No, I didn't.
Give her a raise.
Look,
Now, you mentioned
if you take
something
away
about your
guns, she wants to
son,
take away
Sean.
everyone's gun.
Now
If you
went
take
missing.
away guns,
I
you
want
can't
you to
do
come
it.
to my office in
Because people
Diamond
need the
City.
guns for
Give me
protection.
all the details.
Now, entertainment, they want it.
Simon.
Hunting, they want, different things. But they need weapons
I'll
for
meet you there.
protection in
See
this
you in
country.
Diamond City.
People live out in the woods, and they're not going to have a gun. If you look at some countries, I don't want to get them in trouble, but some countries have actually gone the opposite way. They had very strong gun laws, and now they have gone the opposite way, where they allowed people to have guns, where in one case they encouraged people to go out and get guns, and crime is down 29%. And remember this, what is the toughest gun law in the United States? Chicago. On July 4th, 117 people were shot and 17 died. The toughest gun laws in the United States are in the city of Chicago. You know that. They had 117 people shot. Afghanistan does not have that. Afghanistan, by the way, was the lowest point in the history of our country, in my opinion. That was the worst embarrassment to the history of this country, and I say Putin would not have gone into Ukraine if that didn't happen. When he saw the incompetence of Milley and all these guys that are incompetent, when he saw that happen, when they took out the soldiers first, they took out the soldiers first. You know, if you go
Traveling in
back
the
and check your
Commonwealth
records,
as long as I have, you learn a
for
few things.
18 months, I had a talk with Abdul. Abdul was the leader of the Taliban, still is. But I had a strong talk with him. For 18 months, not one American soldier was shot at or killed, but not even shot at. 18 months, and then we had the disaster of the lift, where people were falling off airplanes from 3 times the height of the World Trade Center. I mean, terrible. But
Always keep your eyes
now
out
our
and
country
head
has
on
to
a
be
swivel.
respected again, please.
Things can go from calm to
Go ahead,
deadly
please.
in a heartbeat. Diamond City is as close to safe as you can get in these parts. Security keeps the perimeter under control, but it's always a
I'd be
struggle.
against that.
Despite the mayor's bragging,
That
it
Kamala
really
is
the most
in favor
secure
of not
settlement
giving
around,
Israel weapons.
even if
Yeah.
it comes with a few
That's what
uptight
I hear.
guards.
Look, she's been very, very bad to Israel, and she's been very bad to Jewish people. And I say it, if anybody I know is Jewish and they would vote for Kamala over me, they should have their head examined. If you think about it, I gave them Golan Heights, I gave them the capital of Israel, Jerusalem, I even built the embassy. I gave them no Iran deal. The problem is they didn't do anything with it. Iran was broke. We could have made a deal so easily. I would have had a deal done within 1 week after the election with Iran. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We would have gotten along with Iran. I was looking forward to it. I was fine with Iran. You know, we hit them a couple of times pretty hard, but we would have been fine with Iran. But I terminated that deal. I got them the Abraham Accords. Everyone said that's impossible. I got them the Abraham Accords. She's been very, very bad to Israel, and she's been very bad and disrespectful to Jewish people. And any Jewish person that votes for Kamala and her friend, her new friend, who I don't know if she knew him before, but I don't think he's too good. But anybody that votes for them, if you're Jewish or if you love Israel, you have to have your head examined. Go ahead, please. They have. The FBI came to see me about the shooter. I think they've done a very good job. And I think they did a very good job with respect to this other lunatic that they have in custody. Please. Yeah. Well, I know Willie Brown very well. In fact, I went down in a helicopter with him. We thought maybe this is the end. We were in a helicopter going to a certain location together, and there was an emergency landing. This was not a pleasant landing, and Willie was, he was a little concerned. So I know him pretty well. I mean, I haven't seen him in years. But he told me terrible things about her. But this is what you're telling me anyway, I guess. But he had a big part in what happened with Kamala. But I don't know, maybe he's changed his tune, but he was not a fan of hers very much at that point. Yeah, I do. Go ahead. On what? Well, I'm going to announce that. I'm going to actually have a press conference on that at some point in the near future, so I don't want to tell you now. But Florida does have a vote coming up on that, and I think probably the vote will go in a little more liberal way than
really
people
you.
thought. But I'll be
It's fine to
announcing that
mistake
at the
this mug
appropriate
for
time.
anyone
Please.
else.
You keep laughing at death. Someday death's gonna laugh back.
Not as long as I got a few friends to back me up.
You saved Nick, this agency, and my job. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, we
Happy
gave
to do it.
tremendous
Yeah?
and tremendous for
Go
child
diving
care
into
and all of
scary
that. No,
pre-war
our
ruins all
tax,
the
our
time then,
tax
do ya? Here.
cuts,
I know
which are
an
the
amount
biggest in
wasn't on the
history,
table when you went
our
out to
tax
find him,
cuts are
but
coming due, as you know, very soon.
Deserve a reward.
And if the Democrats
little
don't
something
renew
extra.
them or make it
No.
impossible to
If
renew
you're looking
because
for
it's pretty
work and
close
don't mind putting on the
in
detective
terms
hat,
of vote,
Nick sure could
if
use a
they
new
don't
partner.
renew them,
One
it's the
case at a
equivalent of
time.
having a 4 times
Our
tax
new friend
increase from
needs
what
our
you have
help
right now,
first.
and it'll destroy
All right,
the
let's get
economy.
down to business.
I think they're
Take
under
a seat.
tremendous pressure to
Get
do it.
yourself comfortable.
I've never seen, all my life I grow up and I watch politics, and I used to be on the other side
trying
of
to find
politics first,
someone
then I
who's
run
gone
for office.
missing.
But in all
devil
the
is in
years
the
of studying politics, I've never seen
details. Tell me everything you can, no matter how painful it might be.
seen people get elected by saying we're going to give you a tax increase.
My wife was
These guys get up. Think of it. We're going to give you no
murdered.
security. We're going to give you a weak military. We're going to give you no walls, no borders, no anything. We're going to, all these things they're
trying to
doing.
keep
I
them
mean,
from taking
the
Sean and me.
transgender
It's okay.
became such a
So,
big
what
thing.
else?
But they do all of these
There's a
things.
man and
But
a
they
woman.
always say,
Anything
we're going to
else?
give you a tax
looking
increase.
for my
I never
son.
heard anybody campaign on a tax increase. A politician
A lot
has
of
always
groups in
said,
the Commonwealth
I
that
will
take
cut taxes. I'll give you one example. Social
think
Security.
this
They're going to
institute is
destroy
responsible?
Social Security.
they're the boogeymen of the
I am
Commonwealth.
going to leave
goes
Social Security. I'm
easy
not
to see
raising the
why.
years. I'm not
Those
raising
early
the
model
age.
sense of theirs,
I will
then you
be
got the newer
saving
model,
Social
good as
Security,
human,
and I'm going to work it out
infiltrate
that there's
cities
no
and
tax
pull
on
strings
Social
in the
Security for
shadows.
seniors.
Worst
I'm
of
also
all,
doing
no one knows
no
why they do
tax
it, what
on
their plan
tips.
is,
No tax on
where they
tips.
are.
So
Not
waiters,
even me.
waitresses, caddies,
I'm a
people
simp
that drive
myself.
cars, people that get tips who have been harassed by this government, we're going to have no tax on tips. That's a big thing.
As far as I know, never seen any other synth like myself. There's the older ones.
Yeah.
that are
Oh,
dumb
absolutely.
as rocks
Sure.
and all metal. And there's the newer
Because other
ones that
people
are
have done
almost
far bigger
I'm
things than
somewhere
Steve
in
Bannon.
between.
Sure, it's politically motivated. I think it's a horrible thing they did. Look, they've weaponized government against
Either
me.
way,
Look at
I
the
need to
Florida
find
case. It
Sean.
was a
Right.
totally
Speculation's
weaponized
getting us
case.
off
All
track.
of these cases, by the
Let's
way,
focus on-
the New York cases are totally controlled
One of them came right up. to
out
me.
of the Department of Justice. They sent their top person to the
You didn't hear the
various
name
places.
Kellogg
They went to
at
the
all, did
AG's office, got that one going. Then he went to the DA's office, got that one going.
Might have.
Ran through it. No, this is
Everything was
all
foggy.
politics, and it's a disgrace.
Way too
Never
big of a
happened in this country. It's
Ellie,
very
what
common
news do we have
that it
about the
happens, but
Kellogg
not in our
case?
country.
The
It
description
happens
matches.
in banana
Bald head,
republics and
scar,
third world
reputation for
countries,
dangerous
and that's what
mercenary
we're
work, but
becoming.
no one
We have
knows
no
who his
borders. We
employer
have
is.
bad voting
bought a house
regulations.
here in
Anytime
town,
you have
right?
mail-in ballots, you're going to
He
have
had a
problems.
kid with him, didn't he?
France learned that
that's
lesson.
right.
You know,
The
France
house
had
in the
all
abandoned
mail-in
West
voting, and
Stands.
they went back
The boy with him
to
was around
paper
10 years
ballots, voter identification, voter ID. They went back to a normal system, one-day voting. They don't want to be around,
There's no
voting
way
for
that can be
64 days.
Yeah.
And
Big difference
look,
between
the
an
election, I
infant
keep
and a
talking about
10-year-old,
November
but that
5th, but the
doesn't
election
mean we're
really
on the
starts on
wrong
September
track.
6th.
He could have a son of
That's
his
when
own.
it starts because it's early
Maybe
voting.
he's turned
We should have one-day
kidnapping into a
voting.
bad
We should have
habit.
paper ballots.
Any
We should have
event, they
voter
both
ID, and we
vanished
should
a
have
while
proof of
back.
citizenship.
No
Please.
trace. Let's you and I take a walk over to
No,
Kellogg's
the
last
gentlemen
known
are back.
address. See if we can snoop out where he went.
Security doesn't really
For
go
who?
to that part of town, but you two should still be careful.
You're going to have to talk louder, sir.
Always am.
Elon is a very different kind of a guy. He's a very big believer in the country, but he's very worried about the country. He's very worried about the country. And I don't know if it's good for him politically to have supported me, although I think we have a vast majority of this country does support me. But Elon, more than almost anybody I know, I mean, he loves this country. He loves the concept of the country. But like me, he says this country is in big trouble. It's in tremendous danger. Okay, please.
You rescued Valentine. Good water news.
He's more than just a mercenary. He's a professional.
I like this guy.
Clean, thorough.
I like him.
Has no enemies. They're all dead,
Yeah.
except you. 9 to 1 odds.
The polls
says
have
he's our
suggested.
man.
There are some polls that say
More
we're going to
than
win in
just
a
you
landslide.
identifying his distinguishing features.
People are voting
Grandma
with their
was
stomachs,
well-handed as well.
meaning
Leading
they're
a
going to the
small
grocery
team to
store. They're
kidnap a
paying
baby
50,
and
60,
leaving one of the
70% more
parents
for
alive
food than
for
they did
later.
just a couple of years ago.
Many mercs in the
Look at
Commonwealth
what's
can pull
happened
that
to
off.
energy. Look at what's happened not only to their cars, where gasoline's gone from $1.87, $1.87, and we had moments when it was below that, but it's gone from $1.87 to $5, $6, and $7. And they take the strategic national reserves and they take
Keep
it
an eye
out,
out, will you?
even though it's peanuts compared, it doesn't last long. But they're virtually empty now. We've never had it this low. And he's using that to
One
keep
heck
the
of a lot.
gasoline prices as low as possible.
hide, Kellogg?
He's
Why
sucked
don't you
all
give
of
it
the
a
oil out, essentially the gasoline, to keep the price down a little bit, and it's had very little impact. But you know what?
No
we
way
have
I
no
could pick this.
strategic national reserves now. He's emptied it. It's almost
luck?
empty. It's never been this
Find the
low.
key.
And I had it at a good level, and I would have had it more if the Democrats
that
would have
platform
approved the
in the
deal.
distance?
You know, I had a
City
deal to
entrance?
buy it at
That's the
$22
elevator
a
to the
barrel.
mayor's office.
And now
Go
it's
ask around there.
it's going to be close to
stay
100
here
pretty
and see if
soon,
I can
my
give you
opinion.
this
And the Democrats didn't want to do that, but we bought a lot anyway. And we had it pretty good. And what they've done to the national reserves, the strategic national reserves, is, as you know very well, because you cover it, but what they've done is incredible. They've just, for the sake of getting some votes, for the sake of having gasoline, you know, that's meant for wars. It's meant for, like, tragedy. It's not meant to keep a gasoline price down so that somebody can vote for Biden, or in this case, Kamala, who, by the way, is worse than Biden. And she's actually not as smart. Okay? She's actually not as smart. That's hard to believe, isn't it? Yeah, please. Okay? So you could do things that would supplement, absolutely. And those things are pretty open and humane. But you have to be able to have a vote, and all I want to do is give everybody a vote. And the votes are taking place right now as we speak. Yeah, but it's a there are many things on a humane basis that you can do outside of that, but you also have to give a vote, and the people are going to have to decide. Okay, yes, please. You. On what?
The mayor's
No, I think she's actually not as smart as he is. I don't think he's very smart either, by the way. I'm not a big fan of his brain, but I think that she's actually not as smart as he is. Well, she's a woman. She represents certain groups of people, but I will say this. When people find out about her, I think she'll be much less. And I see it right now. I see her going way down on the polls now. Now that people are finding out that she destroyed San Francisco, she destroyed the state of California along with Governor Gavin Newsom. He's been a terrible governor, terrible. But they did it together. And she was early. I mean, she was the first of the prosecutors, really. You know, now you see Philadelphia, you see Los Angeles, you see New York, you see various people that are very bad.
Point the way.
But she was the first of the bad prosecutors. She was
there.
early.
Okay, I'll be here then.
Who?
McDonough?
I will not speak to
you
members
repeat
of the
that,
press.
No, you.
Can
Would
wait
you repeat
outside.
what you said? You have to speak up. This room is very louder.
Come on.
Uh-huh.
Do you hear her? A daily press briefing?
Over here.
Why would I do that? I would give you all the press briefings you want. Look what I'm doing here. But why would I do a daily press? You'd get tired of me very fast. No, but I will give you total access, and you'll have a lot of press briefings, and you'll have from me. Now, are you talking about from me or from a press secretary? Well, yeah, probably they'll do something. If it's not daily, it's going to be a lot. You'll have more than you want.
Stay away from her machinations.
Yeah, please.
Now, what's this about?
A man named Kellogg used to live in this city.
I don't think
I need
it's
to search his
appropriate for
house.
me to talk
I
about
see.
it. I think it's a
Well,
tragic
whatever
story.
reasons you have,
You want to know the
I
truth.
take my
And I felt that
citizens'
with Hillary
privacy
Clinton, too.
very
You know, with Hillary
Even
Clinton, I
after
could have
they've
done
left,
things to her
I
that
can't allow you
would
to
have made your
invade
head
someone else's
spin.
home.
I
That's
thought it
all
was a
there is
very
to it.
bad thing. Take the wife of a president of the United States and put her in jail.
Please.
And then
Mayor
I see
McDonough,
the way they treat
this
me.
man Kellogg
That's
kidnapped
the way
my
it
son.
goes. But
need to find him.
I was very protective of her. Nobody would understand that, but I was. I think my
I will
people
do
understand it.
everything in my
They
power
used
to
to
help
say,
you
lock her up,
overcome
and I'd
this
say, just
horrible
relax,
personal
please.
tragedy.
We won the
I remember
election.
Mr.
I think it
Kellogg.
would be very. I think it would have been horrible for our country
talked to anyone.
if and we had
I
her
doubt you'll
between the hammering of
I
all of the
insist you
files.
take
And
the key
don't forget,
to his old
she got a subpoena from the
Been
United
abandoned.
States Congress, and then
afraid
after
this whole
getting the
thing might
subpoena,
be
she
fruitless.
destroyed everything that she was supposed to get. I could. I didn't think. I thought it was so bad to take her and put her in jail, the wife of a president of the United States, and then when it's my turn, nobody thinks that way. I thought it was a very terrible thing, and she did a lot of very bad things. I'll tell you what, she was pretty evil. But in terms of the country and in terms of unifying the country, bringing it back, to have taken her and to have put her in jail, and I think you know the things as well as I do. There were some pretty bad acts that she did. I think it would have been very bad for our country and a lot of my people, a lot of the MAGA, as they call them, but the base. And I think the base is 75% of the country, far beyond the Republican Party, because we're a party of common sense, and I'm a person of common sense. I want to have low taxes. I want to have strong borders. I want to have a strong military so that China and Russia, look, they've allowed China and Russia to do the impossible combined. They're natural enemies. They always have been, because China needs more land and Russia has it. They've always been natural enemies, and because of Obama, it started with him, and then Biden, because he didn't know what the hell he was doing, they've now become one force. And then now they're adding Iran to it, and they're adding North Korea to it. Pretty powerful force. This is something that is unthinkable that they allowed to happen.
Got the key? All right, let's head in. You do the... Let's take a look around. Kellogg must have left something behind.
Oh, it's going to end. The honeymoon period's going to end. Look, she's got a little period. She's got a convention coming up. It's about policy. It's not about her. I think she's incompetent.
A guy like Kellogg,
because I've watched her. She destroyed California. She destroyed San Francisco. Everything she's touched has turned to bad things. I'm not going to use foul language, but everything she's touched has turned bad. She's incompetent. The reason she's not doing what I do, and she's not doing what she should be doing, she won't even do interviews with friendly people because she can't do better than Biden.
Nothing here.
Now, he had a reason for not doing well, and he was never, 25 years ago, the sharpest or brightest bulb in the ceiling. That I can tell you, okay? He wasn't. But he could do interviews at least.
I'm telling you, something's
Not lately,
right.
he couldn't, perhaps.
Look for anything
But
out of sorts.
she should be doing interviews. She doesn't want to do interviews. And the reason she doesn't is, number one, her policies are so bad. Just to answer your question, I think that it's not going to change because it's really ultimately not about her as much as about her policies. She wants open borders. She wants to defund the police. She wants to defund the police. She wants to take away your guns. Anybody that thinks they're not going to come after your guns, you know, when I was president, I totally protected the guns. And I think it's very important. And I know I take some heat sometimes for it, but you have to have safety. You have to have, when the bad guy walks in with a gun, you got to have some way of protecting yourself. And boy, that would be, you would see crime go up at levels that you've never seen. When people say on the side of the house, this house has guns, we will use the guns, they say, let's pass. We'll go someplace else. You have to have them. And for 4 years, and you know, as you know, the NRA endorsed me very powerfully every time I ran, every time. My sons are members, and I guess indirectly I'm a member too. But they gave me the strongest of endorsements, and that's against very strong competition. People that felt the same way. No, you have to have you have to have that right. Our Second Amendment is a very important right, and it has to be protected. Okay, how about you? Go ahead. Yeah. So there are some of the most brilliant people on Wall Street that are saying that
Ooh, come on. Let me
if President Trump doesn't win, you're going to have a depression. I happen to agree. I think that's true. Because I know how bad these people are.
before you cripple yourself.
You know, they like to say that they did this and that. You saw the $7 trillion that they said it was me for $7 trillion. It wasn't me. It was them. They said that I had inflation.
Valentine.
They took over 9% inflation. No, I had 1% inflation. I had actually no inflation because if you look at the categories, we had just about no inflation. But I had a very minor, I actually had a positive inflation. It was a perfect number because you don't want zero. I mean, I'm not going to give you a whole course on economics, but you don't want zero. 1%, 1.4% is great. You want a little bit because you don't want to have deflation. Deflation is, in many ways, even worse. I had a perfect number right around the 1% number. It was perfect. And to show you, it stayed there for 2 years. And then he did all of the different borrowings that he did. And then he did so many things wrong. Every time he would do it, I'd say, big mistake. And don't forget, they sell hats and they sell stories. Trump was right about everything. I've been right about a lot. Yes, Maggie. Well, we had a commission like other people do, and it's always complicated and it's always controversial. And we had commissions that, and I think of respected people, you know many of the people on the commission, and they would recommend to me certain pardons for certain people. Some people were treated very harshly. A fantastic woman, as you know, she served 24 years for being on a phone call having to do with drugs. You know who I'm talking about. She was great. And she had another 24 years to go. And it was largely about marijuana, which in many cases is now legalized, okay? But we had many very highly regarded people on a commission, and they'd recommend, and they'd put a reason why. Some people were, served time, but they served a lot of time for something that today people wouldn't even serve time by. Well, for the most part, I think they did. I mean, they did. They go through. They went through. I had a commission. It was a very important commission to me, and highly respected people. And frankly, they came up with some decisions that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, but I did it. But I let a lot of people out that had no representation. I went to people in jails, in prison that we respected. I said, how many of these people should be let out? We let out large groups of low-income people that were serving like 40 years for something that today you wouldn't even be put in jail for. We had very few people let out because I said I really don't want to let people out where they had a lot of violence, where they had killing, et cetera, et cetera. And for the most part, we didn't do that. Yeah, please. On defense? Federal Reserve. Right. Well, look, the Federal Reserve is a very interesting thing, and it's sort of gotten it wrong a lot.
Gwinnett Stout
And,
beer, 44 caliber
He's tending to be a
bullets,
little bit late on
and
things.
cigars.
He gets a little bit too
San
early and a little
Francisco
bit too late.
Sunlights.
And that's
Interesting
very
brand.
largely
Won't lead us anywhere
it's
on
a gut
its own,
feeling.
though.
I believe it's really a gut feeling. And I used to have it out with him. I had it out with him a couple of times very strongly. I fought him very hard. And, we get along fine. We get along fine. But I feel that the president should have at least say in
I
there.
wonder if
Yeah,
Dogmeat
I
could
feel
pick
that
up the
strongly. I think
Hey,
that
that's not a bad idea.
in my case, I made a lot of money. I was very successful. And I think I have a better instinct than,
Why don't you
in
go
many
fetch him
cases,
and
people
let
that
him
would
have
be
a
on the
whiff?
Federal Reserve
Give him
or
a
the
picture of
chairman.
the trail.
Yeah.
Before you head out, I know this is
Yeah.
personal business. You have to face Kellogg on your own. Just say so. Besides, you already have plenty
Well,
of
as we
company.
legalize it, I
all
start to
go
agree a lot
sniffing
more
through
because,
your Commonwealth
it's
after
being
one
legalized all over the country. Florida has something coming up. I'll be making a statement about that
want
fairly
you
soon.
with me on this, Nick.
But as we legalize it throughout the country, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's awfully hard to have people all over the jails that are in jail right now for something that's legal. So I think,
Let's
obviously,
get
there's a lot of sentiment to doing that. Yeah, please.
your show from here on out, okay? You say jump, I'll say how high.
Piper.
Well, you'll have to ask her that question because she's the one that said it. I didn't say it. So you'll have to ask her, and I very much appreciate that question, but you'll have to ask her. But I've known her for a long time. I actually contributed to her campaign a long time ago because I was a developer. I contributed to lots of campaigns of Democrats, Republicans, and some were liberal and some were conservative. But you'll have to ask her about that. But to me, it doesn't matter. But to her, from her standpoint, I think it's very
Dogmeat.
disrespectful
Get the
to
scent,
both,
boy.
really. Whether it's Indian or black, I think it's very disrespectful to both. To me, it
Take me
doesn't
to him,
matter.
boy. Take me to Sean.
Please, red dress, red dress. Yeah, pretty much recovered. Yeah, I'm a fast healer. It's a hell of a shot, but I'm a fast healer. Yeah, pretty much recovered. No, it didn't hit that. I got very lucky. It just hit the lobe, as they call it.
At least, not if I'm heading my way.
Yeah, a little bit, not much.
Let's trade.
This is what
On
I got.
top, a little bit. Yeah. Well, we're starting that, yeah. we are going to start the largest mass deportation in the history of our country because we have no choice. It's not sustainable. And we are going to start with violent criminals, and we're going to start then with criminals. And our local police is going to work with us because they know everything about the people. They know their names. They know everything about them. They know their middle name. They know their numbers. And as you know, the other side is trying. You know, look, for years I wondered, why are they allowing these people to come in at levels like this? It was incredible. And I said 2 reasons. They're either really stupid, and I don't believe they're stupid, because anybody that can cheat on elections like they cheat is not stupid. Or, in the alternative, they have bad motives or they hate our country. And I used to think they hate our country. But lately I've seen where they're trying to sign these people up to vote. And they have to stop. They cannot let illegal immigrants vote in this upcoming election. All right, one more question. Go ahead, one more. Make it a good one, please. Right. We have so many ways of making money in this country. We're not going to affect our Social Security. We're not changing it. And I proved that over 4 years. And we're going to do it. It's very unfair to people. They spend their life and they're great citizens and they pay in. We're not going to charge tax to Social Security, the seniors. We're not going to do it. We're not going to charge. And also tax. I say the 2 things.
Hey.
We're going to have no tax on seniors, Social Security, and we're going to have no tax on tips. Very simple. And we are a country that has so many different ways to make money. We have under our feet more liquid gold, I call it oil, and gas, than any country in the world, much more than Saudi Arabia, much more than Russia. We have so many different ways we can make money. We're not going to hurt our seniors with Social Security, and we're not going to charge them tax. Okay? We should not have sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities is a way of protecting criminals, and we should not have sanctuary cities. And if you go to California, and I know it well, I have property out there, great property. If you go to California and you ask the people of California, do they like the idea of sanctuary cities? They don't like it. They're tired of it. They're tired of crime. They're tired of what's happened to our country. Our country's become a crime-ridden mess, and we're going to stop it on November 5th. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. The television and radio stations of the United States and their affiliated stations are proud to provide facilities for a discussion of issues in the current political campaign by the 2 major candidates for the presidency. The candidates need no introduction. The Republican candidate, Vice President Richard M. Nixon, and the Democratic candidate, Senator John F. Kennedy. According to rules set by the candidates themselves, each man shall make an opening statement of approximately 8 minutes duration and a closing statement of approximately 3 minutes duration. In between, the candidates will answer or comment upon answers to questions put by a panel of correspondents. In this, the first discussion in a series of 4 joint appearances, the subject matter has been agreed will be restricted to internal or domestic American matters. And now for the first opening statement by Senator John F. Kennedy.
Smith, Nixon. In the election of 1860, Abraham Lincoln said the question was whether this nation could exist, half slave or half free. In the election of 1960, and with the world around us, the question is whether the world will exist, half slave or half free, whether it will move in the direction of freedom, in the direction of the road that we are taking, or whether it will move in the direction of slavery. I think it will depend in great measure upon what we do here in the United States, on the kind of society that we build, on the kind of strength that we maintain. We discussed tonight domestic issues, but I would not want that to be any implication to be given that this does not involve directly our struggle with Mr. Khrushchev for survival. Mr. Khrushchev is in New York, and he maintains the communist offensive throughout the world because of the productive power of the Soviet Union itself. The Chinese communists have always had a large population, but they are important and dangerous now because they are mounting a major effort within their own country. The kind of country we have here, the kind of society we have, the kind of strength we build in the United States will be the defense of freedom. If we do well here, if we meet our obligations, if we're moving ahead, then I think freedom will be secure around the world. If we fail, then freedom fails. Therefore, I think the question before the American people is, are we doing as much as we can do? Are we as strong as we should be? Are we as strong as we must be if we're going to maintain our independence? And if we're going to maintain and hold out the hand of friendship to those who look to us for assistance, to those who look to us for survival. I should make it very clear that I do not think we're doing enough, that I am not satisfied as an American with the progress that we're making. This is a great country, but I think it could be a greater country. And this is a powerful country, but I think it could be a more powerful country. I'm not satisfied to have 50% of our steel mill capacity unused. I'm not satisfied when the United States had last year the lowest rate of economic growth of any major industrialized society in the world, because economic growth means strength and vitality. It means we're able to sustain our defenses. It means we're able to meet our commitments abroad. I'm not satisfied when we have over $9 billion worth of food, some of it rotting, even though there is a hungry world, and even though 4 million Americans wait every month for a food package from the government, which averages 5 cents a day per individual. I saw cases in West Virginia, here in the United States, where children took home part of their school lunch in order to feed their families, because I don't think we're meeting our obligations towards these Americans. I'm not satisfied when the Soviet Union is turning out twice as many scientists and engineers as we are. I'm not satisfied when many of our teachers are inadequately paid, or when our children go to school part-time shifts. I think we should have an educational system second to none. I'm not satisfied when I see men like Jimmy Hoffa in charge of the largest union in the United States, still free. I'm not satisfied when we are failing to develop the natural resources of the United States to the fullest. Here in the United States, which developed the Tennessee Valley, and which built the Grand Coulee and the other dams in the northwest United States, at the present rate of hydropower production, and that is the hallmark of an industrialized society, the Soviet Union by 1975 will be producing more power than we are. These are all the things, I think, in this country that can make our society strong or can mean that it stands still. I'm not satisfied until every American enjoys his full constitutional rights. If a Negro baby is born, and this is true also of Puerto Ricans and Mexicans in some of our cities, he has about 1/2 as much chance to get through high school as a white baby. He has 1/3 as much chance to get through college as a white student. He has about 1/3 as much chance to be a professional man, about 1/2 as much chance to own a house. He has about 4 times as much chance that he'll be out of work in his life as the white baby. I think we can do better. I don't want the talents of any American to go to waste. I know that there are those who say that we want to turn everything over to the government. I don't at all. I want the individuals to meet their responsibilities. And I want the states to meet their responsibilities. But I think there is also a national responsibility. The argument has been used against every piece of social legislation in the last 25 years. The people of the United States individually could not have developed the Tennessee Valley. Collectively, they could have. A cotton farmer in Georgia, or a peanut farmer, or a dairy farmer in Wisconsin or Minnesota, he cannot protect himself against the forces of supply and demand in the marketplace, but working together in effective governmental programs, he can do so. 17 million Americans who live over 65 on an average Social Security check of about $78 a month. They're not able to sustain themselves individually, but they can sustain themselves through the Social Security system. I don't believe in big government, but I believe in effective governmental action. And I think that's the only way that the United States is going to maintain its freedom. It's the only way that we're going to move ahead. I think we can do a better job. I think we're going to have to do a better job if we are going to meet the responsibilities which time and events have placed upon us. We cannot turn the job over to anyone else. If the United States fails, then the whole cause of freedom fails. And I think it depends in great measure on what we do here in this country. The reason Franklin Roosevelt was a good neighbor in Latin America was because he was a good neighbor in the United States. Because they felt that the American society was moving again. I want us to recapture that image. I want people in Latin America and Africa and Asia to start to look to America, to see how we're doing things, to wonder what the President of the United States is doing, and not to look at Khrushchev or look at the Chinese communists. That is the obligation upon our generation. In 1933, Franklin Roosevelt said in his inaugural that this generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. I think our generation of Americans has the same rendezvous. The question now is, can freedom be maintained under the most severe attack it has ever known? I think it can be. And I think in the final analysis, it depends upon what we do here. I think it's time America started moving again.
And now the opening statement by Vice President Richard M. Nixon.
Smith, Senator Kennedy. The things that Senator Kennedy has said, many of us can agree with. There is no question but that we cannot discuss our internal affairs in the United States without recognizing that they have a tremendous bearing on our international position. There is no question but that this nation cannot stand still because we are in a deadly competition. A competition not only with the men in the Kremlin, but the men in Peking. We're ahead in this competition, as Senator Kennedy, I think, has implied. But when you're in a race, the only way to stay ahead is to move ahead. And I subscribe completely to the spirit that Senator Kennedy has expressed tonight, the spirit that the United States should move ahead. Where then do we disagree? I think we disagree on the implication of his remarks tonight and on the statements that he has made on many occasions during his campaign to the effect that the United States has been standing still. We heard tonight, for example, the statement made that our growth in national product last year was the lowest of any industrial nation in the world. Now, last year, of course, was 1958. That happened to be a recession year. But when we look at the growth of GNP this year, a year of recovery, we find that it's 6 9/10% and one of the highest in the world today. More about that later. Looking then to this problem of how the United States should move ahead and where the United States is moving, I think it is well that we take the advice of a very famous campaigner. Let's look at the record. Is the United States standing still? Is it true that this administration, as Senator Kennedy has charged, has been an administration of retreat, of defeat, of stagnation? Is it true that as far as this country is concerned, in the field of electric power, in all of the fields that he has mentioned, we have not been moving ahead? Well, we have a comparison that we can make. We have the record of the Truman administration of 7.5 years and the 7.5 years of the Eisenhower administration. When we compare these two records in the areas that Senator Kennedy has discussed tonight, I think we find that America has been moving ahead. Let's take schools. We have built more schools in these last 7.5 years than we built in the previous 7.5, for that matter, in the previous 20 years. Let's take hydroelectric power. We have developed more hydroelectric power in these 7.5 years than was developed in any previous administration in history. Let us take hospitals. We find that more have been built in this administration than in the previous administration. The same is true of highways. Let's put it in terms that all of us can understand. We often hear gross national product discussed, And in that respect, may I say that when we compare the growth in this administration with that of the previous administration, that then there was a total growth of 11% over 7 years. In this administration, there's been a total growth of 19% over 7 years. That shows that there's been more growth in this administration than in its predecessors. But let's not put it there. Let's put it in terms of the average family. What has happened to you? We find that your wages have gone up 5 times as much in the Eisenhower administration as they did in the Truman administration. What about the prices you pay? We find that the prices you pay went up 5 times as much in the Truman administration as they did in the Eisenhower administration. What's the net result of this? This means that the average family income went up 15% in the Eisenhower years as against 2% in the Truman years. Now, this is not standing still. But, good as this record is, may I emphasize, it isn't enough. A record is never something to stand on. It's something to build on. And in building on this record, I believe that we have the secret for progress. We know the way to progress. And I think, first of all, our own record proves that we know the way. Senator Kennedy has suggested that he believes he knows the way. I respect the sincerity with which he makes that suggestion. But on the other hand, when we look at the various programs that he offers, they do not seem to be new. They seem to be simply retreads of the programs of the Truman administration which preceded it. And I would suggest that during the course of the evening he might indicate those areas in which his programs are new, where they will mean more progress than we had then. What kind of programs are we for? We are for programs that will expand educational opportunities, that will give to all Americans their equal chance for education, for all of the things which are necessary and dear to the hearts of our people. We are for programs, in addition, which will see that our medical care for the aged is much better handled than it is at the present time. Here again, may I indicate that Senator Kennedy and I are not in disagreement as to the aim. We both want to help the old people. We want to see that they do have adequate medical care. The question is the means. I think that the means that I advocate will reach that goal better than the means that he advocates. I could give better examples, but for whatever it is, whether it's in the field of housing, or health, or medical care, or schools, or the development of electric power, we have programs which we believe will move America, move her forward and build on the wonderful record that we have made over these past 7.5 years. Now, when we look at these programs, might I suggest that in evaluating them, we often have a tendency to say that the test of a program is how much you're spending. I will concede that in all the areas to which I have referred, Senator Kennedy would have the federal government spend more than I would have it spend. I costed out the cost of the Democratic platform. It runs a minimum of $13.2 billion a year more than we are presently spending to a maximum of $18 billion a year more than we're presently spending. Now, the Republican platform will cost more, too. It will cost a minimum of $4 billion a year more, a maximum of $4.9 billion a year more than we're presently spending. Now, does this mean that his program is better than ours? Not at all. Because it isn't a question of how much the federal government spends. It isn't a question of which government does the most. It's a question of which administration does the right thing. And in our case, I do believe that our programs will stimulate the creative energies of 180 million free Americans. I believe the programs that Senator Kennedy advocates will have a tendency to stifle those creative energies. I believe, in other words, that his programs would lead to the stagnation of the motive power that we need in this country to get progress. The final point that I would like to make is this. Senator Kennedy has suggested in his speeches that we lack compassion for the poor, for the old, and for others that are unfortunate. Let us understand throughout this campaign that his motives and mine are sincere. I know what it means to be poor. I know what it means to see people who are unemployed. I know Senator Kennedy feels as deeply about these problems as I do. But our disagreement is not about the goals for America, but only about the means to reach those goals.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. That completes the opening statements, and now the candidates will answer questions or comment upon one another's answers to questions put by correspondents of the networks. The correspondents.
I'm Sander Van Oker, NBC News.
I'm Charles Warren, Mutual News.
I'm Stuart Novin, CBS News.
Bob Fleming, ABC News.
The first question to Senator Kennedy from Mr. Fleming.
Senator, the Vice President in his campaign has said that you are naive and at times immature. He has raised the question of leadership. On this issue, why do you think people should vote for you rather than the Vice President?
Well, the Vice President and I came to the Congress together. 1946, we both served in the Labor Committee. I've been there now for 14 years, the same period of time that he has. So that our experience in government is comparable. Secondly, I think the question is, what are the programs that we advocate? What is the party record that we lead? I come out of the Democratic Party, which in this century has produced Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman, and which supported and sustained these programs which I've discussed tonight. Mr. Nixon comes out of the Republican Party. He was nominated by it. And it is a fact that through most of these last 25 years, the Republican leadership has opposed federal aid for education, medical care for the aged, development of the Tennessee Valley, development of our natural resources. I think Mr. Nixon is an effective leader of his party. I hope he would grant me the same. The question before us is, which point of view and which party do we want to lead the United States?
Mr. Nixon, would you like to comment on that statement? The next question, Mr. Novin.
Mr. Vice President, your campaign stresses the value of your 8-year experience, and the question arises as to whether that experience was as an observer or as a participant or as an initiator of policy making. Would you tell us, please, specifically what major proposals you have made in the last 8 years that have been adopted by the administration?
It would be rather difficult to cover them in 2.5 minutes. I would suggest that these proposals could be mentioned. First, after each of my foreign trips, I have made recommendations that have been adopted. For example, after my first trip abroad, I strongly recommended that we increase our exchange programs, particularly as they related to exchange of persons, of leaders in the labor field and in the information field. After my trip to South America, I made recommendations that a separate inter-American lending agency be set up, which the South American nations would like much better than to participate in the lending agencies which treated all the countries of the world the same. I have made other recommendations after each of the other trips. For example, after my trip abroad to Hungary, I made some recommendations with regard to the Hungarian refugee situation, which were adopted not only by the President, but some of them were enacted into law by the Congress. Within the administration, as a chairman of the President's Committee on Price Stability and Economic Growth, I have had the opportunity to make recommendations which have been adopted within the administration and which I think have been reasonably effective. I know Senator Kennedy suggested in a speech at Cleveland yesterday that that committee had not been particularly effective. I would only suggest that while we do not take the credit for it, I would not presume to, that since that committee has been formed, the price line has been held very well within the United States.
Well, I would say in the latter that and that's what I found somewhat unsatisfactory about the figures, Mr. Nixon, that you used in your previous speech. When you talk about the Truman administration, Mr. Truman came to office in 1944 and at the end of the war, and difficulties that were facing the United States during that period of transition, 1946 when price controls were lifted. So it's rather difficult to use an overall figure of taking those 7.5 years and comparing them to the last 8 years. I'd prefer to take the overall percentage record of the last 20 years of the Democrats and the 8 years of the Republicans to show an overall period of growth. In regard to price stability, I'm not aware that that committee did produce recommendations that ever were certainly before the Congress from the point of view of legislation in regard to controlling prices. In regard to the exchange of students, of labor unions, I am chairman of the subcommittee on Africa, and I think that one of the most unfortunate phases of our policy towards that country was the very minute number of exchanges that we had. I think it's true of Latin America also. We did come forward with a program of students for the Congo of over 300, which was more than the federal government had for all of Africa the previous year. So that I don't think that we have moved, at least in those two areas, with sufficient vigor.
The next question to Senator Kennedy from Mr. Warren.
Senator Kennedy, during your brief speech a few minutes ago, you mentioned farm surpluses. I'd like to ask this. It's a fact, I think, that presidential candidates traditionally make promises to farmers. Lots of people, I think, don't understand why the government pays farmers for not producing certain crops, or paying farmers if they overproduce, for that matter. Let me ask, sir, why can't the farmer operate like the businessman who operates a factory? If an auto company overproduces a certain model car, Uncle Sam doesn't step in and buy up the surplus. Why this constant courting of the farmer?
Well, because I think that if the federal government moved out of the program and withdrew its supports, then I think you would have complete economic chaos. The farmer plants in the spring and harvests in the fall. There are hundreds of thousands of them. They're not able to control their market very well. They bring their crops in or their livestock in, many of them about the same time. They have only a few purchasers that buy their milk or their hogs, few large companies in many cases, and therefore the farmer is not in a position to bargain very effectively in the marketplace. I think the experience of the 20s has shown what a free market could do to agriculture. And if the agricultural economy collapses, then the economy of the rest of the United States sooner or later will collapse. The farmers are the #1 market for the automobile industry of the United States. The automobile industry is the #1 market for steel. So if the farmer's economy continues to decline as sharply as it has in recent years, then I think you would have a recession in the rest of the country. So I think the case for the government intervention is a good one. Secondly, my objection to present farm policy is that there are no effective controls to bring supply and demand into better balance. The dropping of the support price in order to limit production has not worked. And we now have the highest surpluses, $9 billion worth. We've had a higher tax load from the Treasury for the farmer in the last few years with the lowest farm income in many years. I think that this farm policy has failed. And my judgment, the only policy that will work will be for effective supply and demand to be in balance. And that can only be done through governmental action. I therefore suggest that in those basic commodities which are supported, that the federal government, after endorsement by the farmers in that commodity, attempt to bring supply and demand into balance. Attempt effective production controls so that we won't have that 5 or 6% surplus which breaks the price 15 or 20%. I think Mr. Benson's program has failed. And I must say, after reading the Vice President's speech before the farmers as he read mine, I don't believe that it's very much different from Mr. Benson. I don't think it provides effective governmental controls. I think the support prices are tied to the average market price of the last 3 years, which was Mr. Benson's theory. I therefore do not believe that this is a sharp enough breach with the past to give us any hope of success for the future.
Mr. Nixon, comment?
I, of course, disagree with Senator Kennedy insofar as his suggestion as to what should be done on the farm program. He has made the suggestion that what we need is to move in the direction of more government controls, a suggestion that would also mean raising prices that the consumers pay for products and imposing upon the farmers controls on acreage even far more than they have today. I think this is the wrong direction. I don't think this has worked in the past. I do not think it will work in the future. The program that I have advocated is one which departs from the present program that we have in this respect. It recognizes that the government has a responsibility to get the farmer out of the trouble he presently is in because the government got him into it. And that's the fundamental reason why we can't let the farmer go by himself at the present time. The farmer produced these surpluses because the government asked him to through legislation during the war. Now that we have these surpluses, it's our responsibility to indemnify the farmer during that period that we get rid of the surpluses. Until we get the surpluses off the farmer's back, however, we should have a program, such as I announced, which will see that farm income holds up. But I would propose holding that income up, not through a type of program that Senator Kennedy has suggested that would raise prices, but one that would indemnify the farmer, pay the farmer in kind from the products which are in surplus.
The next question to Vice President Nixon from Mr. Vanocur.
Mr. Vice President, since the question of executive leadership is a very important campaign issue, I'd like to follow Mr. Novin's question. Now, Republican campaign slogans, you see them on signs around the country as we did last week, say, it's experience that counts. That's over a picture of yourself, sir, implying that you've had more governmental executive decision-making experience than your opponent. Now, in his news conference on August 24th, President Eisenhower was asked to give one example of a major idea of yours that he adopted. His reply was, and I'm quoting, "If you give me a week, I might think of one. I don't remember." Now, that was a month ago, sir, and the President hasn't brought it up since. And I'm wondering, sir, if you can clarify which version is correct, the one put out by Republican campaign leaders or the one put out by President Eisenhower?
Well, I would suggest, Mr. Van Oker, that if you know the President, that was probably a facetious remark. I would also suggest that insofar as his statement is concerned, that I think it would be improper for the President of the United States to disclose the instances in which members of his official family had made recommendations, as I have made them through the years, to him which he has accepted or rejected. The President has always maintained, and very properly so, that he is entitled to get what advice he wants from his cabinet and from his other advisors without disclosing that to anybody, including, as a matter of fact, to Congress. Now, I can only say this. Through the years, I have sat in the National Security Council. I have been in the cabinet. I have met with the legislative leaders. I have met with the President when he made the great decisions with regard to Lebanon, Quemoy Matsu, other matters. The President has asked for my advice. I have given it. Sometimes my advice has been taken. Sometimes it is not. I do not say that I have made the decisions, and I would say that no president should ever allow anybody else to make the major decisions. The President only makes the decisions. All that his advisors do is to give counsel when he asks for it. As far as what experience counts and whether that is experience that counts, that isn't for me to say. I can only say that my experience is there for the people to consider. Senator Kennedy's is there for the people to consider. As he pointed out, we came to the Congress in the same year. His experience has been different from mine. Mine has been in the executive branch. His has been in the legislative branch. I would say that the people now have the opportunity to evaluate his as against mine, and I think both he and I are going to abide by whatever the people decide.
Senator Kennedy?
Well, I'll just say that the question is of experience, and the question also is what our judgment is of the future, and what our goals are for the United States, and what ability we have to implement those goals. Abraham Lincoln came to the presidency in 1860 after a rather little-known session in the House of Representatives, and after being defeated for the Senate in 58 and was a distinguished president. There is no certain road to the presidency. There are no guarantees that if you take one road or another that you will be a successful president. I have been in the Congress for 14 years. I have voted in the last 8 years, and the Vice President was presiding over the Senate and meeting his other responsibilities. I have met decisions over 800 times on matters which affect not only the domestic security of the United States, but as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The question really is, which candidate and which party can meet the problems that the United States is going to face in the 60s?
The next question to Senator Kennedy from Mr. Novins.
Senator Kennedy, in connection with these problems of the future that you speak of and the program that you enunciated earlier in your direct talk, you call for expanding some of the welfare programs for schools, for teacher salaries, medical care, and so forth, but you also called for reducing the federal debt. And I'm wondering how you, if you're president in January, would go about paying the bill for all this. Does this mean that
I did not advocate reducing the federal debt because I don't believe that you're going to be able to reduce the federal debt very much in 1961, 2, or 3. I think you have heavy obligations which affect our security, which we're going to have to meet. And therefore, I've never suggested we should be able to retire the debt substantially or even at all in 1961 or 2.
Senator, I believe in one of your speeches you suggested that reducing the interest rate would help toward...
No, not reducing the interest. Reducing the interest rate, in my judgment, the hard money, tight money policy, fiscal policy of this administration has contributed to the slowdown in our economy, which helped bring the recession of 54, which made the recession of 58 rather intense, and which has slowed somewhat our economic activity in 1960. What I have talked about, however, the kind of programs that I talk about, in my judgment, are fiscally sound. Medical care for the aged, I would put under Social Security. The Vice President and I disagree on this. The program, the Javits-Nixon or the Nixon-Javits program, would have cost, if fully used, $600 million by the government per year and $600 million by the state. The program which I advocated, which failed by 5 votes in the United States Senate, would have put medical care for the aged in Social Security and would have been paid for through the Social Security system and the Social Security tax. Secondly, I support federal aid to education and federal aid for teachers' salaries. I think that's a good investment. I think we're going to have to do it. And I think to heap the burden further on the property tax, which is already strained in many of our community, will ensure, in my opinion, that many of our children will not be adequately educated and many of our teachers not adequately compensated. There is no greater return to an economy or to a society than an educational system second to none. On the question of the development of natural resources, I would pay as you go, in the sense that they would be balanced and the power revenues would bring back sufficient money to finance the projects in the same way as the Tennessee Valley. I believe in the balanced budget, and the only conditions under which I would unbalance the budget would be if there was a grave national emergency or a serious recession. Otherwise, with a steady rate of economic growth, and Mr. Nixon and Mr. Rockefeller in their meeting said a 5% economic growth would bring by 1962 $10 billion extra in tax revenues. Whatever is brought in, I think that we can finance essential programs within a balanced budget if business remains orderly.
Yes, I think what Mr. Novin is referring to was not one of Senator Kennedy's pieces of the Democratic platform, which did mention cutting the national debt. I think, too, that it should be pointed out that, of course, it is not possible, particularly under the proposals that Senator Kennedy has advocated, either to cut the national debt or to reduce taxes. As a matter of fact, it will be necessary to raise taxes. As Senator Kennedy points out, that as far as his one proposal is concerned, the one for medical care for the aged, that would be financed out of Social Security. That, however, is raising taxes for those who pay Social Security. He points out that he would make pay-as-you-go be the basis for our natural resources development. For our natural resources development, which I also support incidentally, however, whenever you appropriate money for one of these projects, you have to pay now and appropriate the money, and while they eventually do pay out, it doesn't mean that the government doesn't have to put out the money this year. And so I would say that in all of these proposals Senator Kennedy has made, they will result in one of two things. Either he has to raise taxes or he has to unbalance the budget. If he unbalances the budget, that means you have inflation, and that will be, of course, a very cruel blow to the very people, the older people that we've been talking about. As far as aid for school construction is concerned, I favor that, as Senator Kennedy did in January of this year, when he said he favored that rather than aid to teacher salaries. I favor that because I believe that's the best way to aid our schools without running any risk whatever of the federal government telling our teachers what to teach.
The next question to Vice President Nixon from Mr. Warren.
Mr. Vice President, you mentioned schools. It was just yesterday, I think you asked for a crash program to raise education standards. And this evening you talked about advances in education. Mr. Vice President, you said it was back in 1957, that salaries paid to school teachers were nothing short of a national